Hello, Chelsea. It's lovely to see you. Welcome to this chat where we're going to talk a little bit about yourself and your journey at well-being, your journey in counseling, and also the upcoming retreat you have here at the end of July.
Hi, Sal. It's good to be with you.
Good to be with you too. So, when did you first come to well-being?
So, 8 years ago in 2015, um, was brought to Wellbeing Retreat Center by my husband, and he had discovered it through um, some of Dawn's work at Lincoln Memorial University. And when I got there, it was a total surprise. He said, pack your suitcase. We're going going on a trip. And we're following this gravel road, and there's baby cows and deer. And um, I, I, it was a breathtaking experience just getting on the property. And I had no idea what what was going to unfold from that day on. The retreat center has become such a special place to me and my husband. It's where we got married um, many years later. But what I found there immediately was this sense of home away from home. I know that's echoed by many people who come out there, but a sense of refuge. Like I really can unplug and tune in and have experiences with myself and with nature and with others that are just not accessible in my and many people's day-to-day lives. And I also found in the years that followed, I'm thinking the first, second, third year that I would go out to the retreat center to visit, I found that it was so helpful for me to have a space like what has been curated there, to reorient. That's the word that comes to mind. Like so much was changing for me in my inner world and in my worldview. I was questioning a lot of beliefs and um, um, things that I had inherited from family and from culture and from my experiences prior to coming to the retreat center. So it was like a place and a space where I could digest and um, learn and expand those mental horizons, and to do all of that in a very supported way with Dawn, with Patty, with the people who were drawn to the retreat center for their own curiosities and their own reasons. It just felt like such an open-minded, warm, grounded community where there was such a commitment to integrity and authenticity and a commitment to nature and living in harmony with nature. And all of these things were just like resonating with my soul. But I did not, prior to the retreat center, have a real source for uh, or resource for that kind of attunement to what my soul needed at the time. So it found me. I found it. I have a lot of people, again, my husband, Don and Patty, um, a lot of the retreat goers that I met early on, to thank for that. But yeah, there's really no looking back. It'll always be a part of my life.
I remember that you came and did a personal retreat for a period of a month, I think in February 2017, just before you went to do your master's program in counseling. What was your intention behind doing that, and how did that unfold for you?
Yeah. So you and I had met, I think, at a retreat just before that, right? Maybe the September before that. And I mean, there was just so much toiling that was going on in my inner soil, just like excavating what is here that's no longer serving me, and what replaces it? Does anything replace it? Just, a lot happening in my inner world. And I had made this decision to go back to school. I had a lot of clarity around that I wanted to become a counselor, a therapist. And I had this window of opportunity that month of February in 2017 to spend a lot of unstructured, silent time at the retreat center. And Dawn and Patty were so open and welcoming, and really, back to that integrity piece, made such um, a genuine effort to let me have whatever experience I needed to have, which really let me have the time and the space to again, like, orient to what it was that I wanted, needed. So much happened in that month, and I think a large part of it was the silence and the space that well-being offers, the undistracted time, and the just physical but mental space that was allowed. um I think I'm speaking for many people of our generation, and beyond our generation, where normal life is so much about taking in and taking in and stimulation, and the news and social media, and it can be a barrage of information. And the space and silence that well-being retreat center offered me every time I go, but in particular during that month, allowed me to, in large part, experience myself without all of that input. And as an artist and a deep thinker, that was a life-altering experience that I don't think I would have had access to otherwise, just to see what's in here. What's in here already, when I'm not consuming, and when I'm not taking on other people's projections or narratives of me. So, in a word, I found freedom. And everything about the retreat center supported that. Yeah, I can't speak highly enough about the welcoming atmosphere.
Yeah, I love what you say about just having the opportunity and the space and the silence to wade through all of the stuff that may have been ingested, and to really get to experience what's underneath that, and also the freedom to feel all of those things too, which is feels like it's quite rare. Yeah.
Yeah, and as a therapist, one of the most important parts of my training, it's like a basic, a foundational part of becoming a therapist is being this non-judgmental, unbiased as best you can, objective presence for your clients. And our families can't provide that for us. They're too invested.
Mm-hmm.
Our friends can't, they can do the best job they can, but they still have some investment, right, in the outcome. And I felt that not just the land of Wellbeing Retreat Center having its capacity to hold whatever if you want to go lay in the river, it'll hold you. If you want to go to the top of the mountain and let out a good cry or a scream, it'll hold you. But also Dawn and Patty and my experience of them and the people that they bring in, the people that gravitate toward them, have such a non-judgmental, open and accepting presence that in so many ways that I think I'm still uncovering opened doors for me, in the realm of relational healing and what it's like to just be able to cry and be a mess, feel like you're being a mess, and lay out all of the things that feel really complicated and hard, and to just be met with such warmth and acceptance and patience. Yeah, I learned so much. I learned so much there experientially, not so much. These are the lessons we're setting out to teach Chelsea while she's here. but but just by being there in the atmosphere that they've curated is really transformational.
It's interesting what you said there and what you said before about if you were to put one word under that time, it would be freedom. And then what you just expressed about being able to bring forward all these feelings that may not be so pleasant, but also having the freedom to feel those and to not run away from them or whatever's arising. It feels quite special.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's ironic, right? The freedom to not run away from it, right? Yeah. 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 There's always for me a sense of I can do this when I'm out there. I don't know what, it's hard to put a finger on what it is. I think about the trees and I think about the ancient river that runs through the property, and I think about the mountains and their perseverance, and it's just like, oh, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, I think also like what you mentioned, a core element of that is the silence.
Yeah.
It's almost like that evokes things to come forward, the sort of the calming presence of silence, which is completely non-judgmental. It sort of almost gives permission for the content to come up.
Yeah, we're so, I'm speaking generally here and about myself, but we get so scared of silence. Like, what's going to show up in silence? What's going to be here to confront in silence? And so then we just continue consuming and filling the silence. That I do think there is a way that we, like, the feeling that we will be ambushed if we slow down and sit in the silence. There is something quite tangible and real about that feeling. And yet, in my experience, consistently at the retreat center, with the silence that's just this constant thread. All of that, it's like the wave that seems like it's about to ambush you, just it has this time to slow down into a sort of trickle, and it's like you can take one thing at a time, and then a day or two later there's one thing that comes up, and then there's some space, and it's like, oh, I'm in the silence and there's nothing else coming up. It's like that's just the spaciousness, right? The spaciousness that the property and the intentionality of the retreat center allows for this inner spaciousness that it begins to open up and show itself in people's experience.
Yeah. Okay. So you did the month and then you went off and did your master's at school and you finished that and have been in private practice for a few years. Would you like to talk about that and what that's been like for you, being in private practice as a therapist?
Yeah. So I'll connect some dots here. One of the reasons that I went to or resonated with the retreat center in the beginning was that I was practicing mindfulness, and I was at that point beginning to teach mindfulness meditation, and was really all about it, and found the retreat center to be really supportive and yeah, it's supportive of that practice and deepening my learning. And yet I kept bumping up against this, like, what at the time I would have just called trauma. Like, I was seeing it in myself, I was seeing it in my meditation students, and I was like, there's just got to be, it can't be this simple. We just, that any one of us can just sit and quiet our minds and get into our body and feel, good, or, and I'm not saying any of that's like an accurate description of a meditation practice, but I just thought that this seems like oversimplified, and a lot of those inner questions and dialogues is what led me to get my master's. I could deepen my own experiential learning, but so that I could also help the people that I was starting to work with. I wanted to have a skill set that could help me do that in a responsible way. And that led me to study couples and family therapy. It seemed intuitive to me, based on my own life experience and the experience of my family, that what I was carrying in my body was also, in large part, what I had inherited from my parents and been conditioned by my parents and my family system to carry. It's much like an accent, right? You have an accent based on the way that your family might speak, but that's also based on where geographically your family is. There's just these systems at play. And I was very interested in the intersection of these larger systems that we're in and how we could become more mindful of those as they show up in our inner experience. So when I graduated and I did some agency work for a short time, but it was really not a good fit for me and the kind of systemic work that I wanted to do. So I pretty quickly got into private practice, where I see couples, I see families, and I work mostly with individual adults, but we're rarely working with just an individual's individual problems. It's always, at least in the orientation that I have in this work, it's always stemming back from, you're having a thought, maybe a judgmental thought. Where did you first experience that thought? Where did you first hear that thought? Where did that thought get planted? And we can nearly always trace it back to a past experience with a family member or a primary caregiver or the culture that we're in. And so I am very invested in depersonalizing what feels like really personal problems for people. That's what's been really helpful for me on my journey. And that is largely what informs my practice and my interest in facilitating family constellation workshops, which are not easy to describe or explain, but they are a very experiential group therapy modality. They don't always have to take place in group. I do them with individuals sometimes in creative ways. But when we normally think of therapy, maybe we think about sitting in a room with your therapist and the two of you are talking about your issues or what's bothering you. And I've already mentioned that part of what's important to me in that dyadic relationship is that we're mentioning our parents and our caregivers and our systems around us and how they are maybe not physically in the room, but they are in the room, right? We're hearing their voices, or we're bringing with us in the present lessons that we learn from them. Family constellations allow us to almost make that more visible, more tangible, more real by enlisting the help of a group and group members to represent members of our family, and help us create a sort of three-dimensional map that we can, by and large, just get a bigger perspective on what has seemed like a very, again, personal problem. And the work for me is just so rich. There's just so much aliveness and vitality for me as a facilitator. But it's more than that. It's like I get to see how much these group members who take part in constellations want to heal, there's like this inner movement toward healthy balance, healthy repair. And I just find it so fulfilling to watch total strangers, for the most part, stepping in and offering so much support and validation and transformational insight. I mean, they're just sharing what their experience is in the present. It's a very mindfulness-based practice, as opposed to like trying to rehearse something or say the right thing. But what comes out of those mindful observations are such poignant truths and such powerful statements that get to be shared within the group across family member, people representing family members, that I wouldn't be honest if I said that I didn't want this work to be the bulk of what I do. I find it just so powerful. And that's why over the years, I've been integrating it more and more in the retreats that I offer at Wellbeing Retreat Center, because it's just, it's so much better than what I could offer alone. Yeah. And I'd like to maybe take some pressure off of myself as the retreat leader. Of course, there's bits of insight and observations and conversations that I can have with retreat goers, but I find that these group experiences just have a way of catalyzing, putting into motion very deep transformational and healing experiences that I just could not have brought about on my own, nor would I want to, carry that kind of weight in someone else's healing journey. It's not my, that's never my orientation to be a healer or even a facilitator of someone's healing. It's like, if you're seeking healing, I will happily stand with you and walk with you and discover with you. But wow, we can see so much more on this path the more perspectives we bring in and the more group members that come in to help us hold the space and help us reveal what maybe has been just below the surface of our awareness in our family system for decades, even generations. So yeah, in my best attempt with words, that's my path and my passion and what I hope to participate in and bring to people at this upcoming retreat.
Yeah, thank you, Chelsea, for that beautiful presentation of your journey. And I just wanted to pick up on the family constellations because I know that that is such an important part of your work. And I also have some personal experience in doing that with you because I had the opportunity to be on your retreat last year at Wellbeing. And I'd never experienced family constellations before and had no context for it. So it was really interesting to be part of that. And from what I remember, my experience was that it was essentially a conscious reenactment of a situation that somebody might have had with a loved one or with someone who's now deceased. And it gave them an opportunity to consciously and in a safe environment relive that experience and with strangers and who were playing almost like an acting role of how they would respond if they were in that situation. And what I thought was really interesting was because everybody was playing a different role, which they had no experience of, they were just in that moment playing that role and having to act from that position as how they felt in the moment. What I felt it really brought forward was the experience of innocence, of how you saw that everybody's actions came from a place of innocence. Because in the moment of that reenactment, people were asked to go with how they felt. And so that was such a natural arising that under certain circumstances, we're going to feel a certain way without, and you couldn't blame anybody in the family constellations because they weren't actually part of the situation, but it was just how they were feeling in that moment. And then the action took place. And for me, that was quite profound because in reality, that's what happens too. A feeling might arise or a belief, and then there's a kind of a reaction to it. And so my experience of it was this profound sense of innocence and getting to see that played out just felt like a really rare opportunity because so often if we experience a situation with someone else, there mightn't be the capacity to speak with that person again. They may not even still be alive. And so we might still feel this duty of care to how we feel and to that relationship. And so it felt like it was a really fascinating and healing opportunity to just give voice to something that we care about and be open to see the different sides of how it presents. So yeah, I truly am on board with that and can see why it's becoming so integral in your work, and how people's experience of that, yeah, can be quite transformational.
Yeah, I absolutely echo in my experience what you're sharing. And I think many people have this takeaway. They say, oh, anyone would have done what I did in that situation, or anyone in those shoes would have done what they did. And so, yes, you see someone's innocence, you also feel compassion. There's these very, especially when we're on a trauma recovery journey, those sorts of perspectives and emotions like compassion and seeing someone's innocence are hard to access. And the power of family constellations, which has such immense capacity to hold really heavy things. The power of these groups is that it makes those more loving and heart-centered experiences accessible, not just accessible, but like undeniable. Yeah. 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 So, I named this retreat The Art of Belonging. And a lot of that comes from my work as an artist. I very much think of therapy as an art. Family constellations are a very visual, embodied sort of art in and of themselves. And this word belonging is so important, such a core element to the work of family constellations, because in order for things to heal in a family, everyone must have a place. Everyone must come to some sense of, I belong here, even if that's complicated. And I think that journey of belonging, feeling that we belong with our family, belong with our people, belong with our group, even if that's a family that we go on to later choose that looks different than our family of origin. I feel that belonging is made possible by this inner belonging, this sense of coming home to oneself and deeply listening and learning about oneself. I think that is a very important, especially as we're adults trying to go back and do some of this work. That's a very important part of finding who we belong with and how we belong. And yeah, as I'm saying it, it's like they don't go separately, right? Because of course the group and the family that we find belonging in also can reinforce our sense of belonging to ourselves. But we also know that it's true that our family and our culture, if they say you don't belong in some way or another, that deeply impacts our sense of belonging within ourselves. Am I okay the way that I am? Is there something wrong with me? So again, these things go hand in hand, and I think it's like the best way that I can conceptualize my journey from this internal mindfulness focused inner journey to, okay, but how do we integrate that with the family that we come out of and the family that we want to create for ourselves? How do I belong to myself in a coherent and integrous way? And how do I find the people that help support that sense of belonging? And that's what I hope retreat participants really experience and deepen their awareness of and take away from this retreat.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. And for those who are interested in doing that, they can find out more about your retreat on Wellbeing's website, where there's some more information about you and the retreat and also the sign-up form. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming on today to just give some more thorough detail about the work that you do, your journey, and also your offering here at Wellbeing.
Thank you for having me, Sal. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Take care.
You too.